John Brennan, as I said, coming apart at the seams right now. This is a former CIA director for Barack Obama, and he's, of course, now an MSNBC hack. I mean, like epic hack. This is one of the guys that was on the 51X spooks thing, right? You know, they had to write that letter saying there was no way in HELL's creation that Hunter Biden laptop was real. That was just misinformation fed you courtesy of the Russians and Rudy Giuliani, except that it was real, okay? It was absolutely real. Anyway, this is a guy who's the architect behind the Russia thing, and it's coming back to haunt him. It really is. It's significantly coming back to haunt him because he's a guy who I think they're gonna find was up to some no good stuff. FBI launching criminal investigations of John Brennan and James Comey. That story coming out just recently. And this Comey investigation, this Brennan investigation has, well, John Brennan kind of breaking down. As you can imagine, I mean, I'd be pretty upset too, wouldn't you?
I keep thinking, okay, this is the authoritarian playbook. We've seen this play out so many times, and unfortunately, I think we're seeing it play out. And a number of academics and writers have pointed out, and Carl Schmitt, who was a German jurist, political philosopher, and writer in the 1930s, his thesis, which Nazi Germany basically took up, was don't worry about doing something that is ethical or principled or good or right. Do whatever you can to win, vanquish your adversaries, vanquish your enemies. And unfortunately, we have seen that happening overseas. We've seen it in Viktor Orban in Hungary. We've seen it with Vladimir Putin. We see it in China, other places. We see it also in terms of, some of the foreign policies that are being implemented, including, in the Middle East right now. So I really am very worried that what we're seeing now in this chapter of American history is a sad deterioration of, I think, the respect for the rule of law and for our system of government. And if a president of the United States is willing to weaponize intelligence and justice and, law enforcement investigators, and the people who head up these departments and agencies are willing to bow to it, we really are in deep, deep trouble, which was why I think so many people are worried about the direction this country is taking.
Maybe you're worried. Right? Only you seem to be the one that's really worried right now. Well, you and some of your former associates, and maybe some of the people at the State Department that are getting tossed. But, this guy is, he's kind of tricky in that he's a total politician. He's a total hack. I mean, you'd think you could expect more from the former head of the CIA, but let's not forget where he works right now, MSNBC contributor. And there is this little moment in time that was captured in 2017 where he was being asked about Russia stuff. And instead of saying like, oh, I believe in evidence, he actually said he doesn't do evidence. No, he does intel. He doesn't do evidence. I'm sitting there going, wait. Like intelligence is one thing, evidence is another. So maybe you like use some intelligence, you get wind of something, and then you try and track it down. Like, wouldn't you have done that with Russia? Wouldn't you have said, oh, okay, I'm looking at this dossier, and wouldn't it be worthwhile for me to figure out like where the dossier came from? I mean, that's what I do as a journalist, as a reporter. I'd say, okay, well, who's the source on this? And what would you find out? Oh, opposition research. Perkins Coie law firm that works for Hillary Clinton, that went and hired Fusion GPS, that went and hired Christopher Steele. Oh, I see. So like you try and understand the sourcing. And then maybe you'd say, well, let's try and like double check this. But nope, none of that happened because you know what? They probably knew the sourcing all along. I mean, they're using intel to try and keep themselves in power. You see how bad this is going to be for one John Brennan and possibly James Comey. Here he is in 2017. I don't do evidence.
Did you find direct evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Putin in Moscow while you were there?
Mr. Rooney, I never was an FBI agent. I never was a prosecutor, so I really don't do evidence. I do intelligence throughout the course of my career. As an intelligence professional, what we try to do is to make sure that we provide all relevant information to the Bureau if there is an investigation underway that they are looking into criminal activity. as I mentioned in my opening statement, I was convinced in the summer that the Russians were trying to interfere in the election. And they were very aggressive. It was a multifaceted effort. And I wanted to make sure that we were able to expose as much of that as possible.
But was there intelligence that said that the Trump campaign was colluding with Moscow during their campaign?
There was intelligence that the Russian intelligence services were actively involved in this effort. And having been involved in many counterintelligence cases in the past, I know what the Russians try to do. They try to suborn individuals. And they try to get individuals, including U.S. persons, to act on their behalf either wittingly or unwittingly. And I was worried by a number of the contacts that the Russians had with U.S. persons. And so therefore, by the time I left office on January 20th, I had unresolved questions in my mind as to whether or not the Russians had been successful in getting U.S. persons involved in the campaign or not to work on their behalf, again, either in a witting or unwitting fashion. And so, therefore, I felt as though the FBI investigation was certainly well-founded and needed to look into those issues.
Did evidence exist of collusion, coordination, conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russian state actors at the time you learned of 2016 efforts?
I encountered and am aware of information and intelligence that revealed contacts and interactions between Russian officials and U.S. persons involved in the Trump campaign that I was concerned about because of known Russian efforts to suborn such individuals. And it raised questions in my mind, again, whether or not the Russians were able to gain the cooperation of those individuals. I don't know whether or not such collusion, that's your term, such collusion existed. I don't know.
I think he did. I think he did. And I think that you actually tried to use this as a way to try and take Donald Trump down. I mean, my own personal view of this, but it's backed up by the fact that you were part of that dossier, forgive me, not just the dossier stuff, Russia, but you were part of that letter. The idea that 51X spooks and hacks would sign on to that. It was our former Secretary of State, Tony Blinken's idea, believe it or not, and he worked with Mike Morrell to get it all done, who was the Deputy Director of the CIA, and John Brennan was one out there like saying all this crazy stuff about Donald Trump. And the next thing you know, you got Jimmy Carter saying, well, he's not my president. He was not elected legitimately. This was bought by the Russians. Whoa. Okay? Whoa. That's like a pretty aggressive thing to say. So why did they do this? What was behind it? We need to know. I'll tell you, Comey doesn't want us to know. This is why they were freaking out about the polls when they realized that Donald Trump was going to win again. Because, they're all going to be in trouble. It's all going to come out.
When you think about a second Trump administration, what do you think the implications would be for the FBI?
Oh, serious, for the Justice Department and the FBI, because Trump is coming for those institutions. He knows their power, and I think he has regrets that he didn't work hard enough to corrupt them last time. So he's coming for them, and that's a danger for all Americans. He's going to put people in positions in those organizations. He didn't have all-stars the last time. He'll have the bottom of the barrel this time, but people who will want to do his will, and that should worry every American. This election matters. Because of a reason like that, people have to participate. You cannot sit on the sideline. I don't care how you feel about Joe Biden, you must vote for him because the consequences on the other side are too severe.
Not for you again. The consequences. For everybody else, I think they're kind of happy that we're going to have some transparency, shed some light on all this stuff, right? About time, I think. This criminal investigation, it's going to be a big deal, and it's going to be one to follow. And it's one that I'm at least encouraged to see, because I think that you need some kind of closure to all of that. I never felt like we really got that last time around. And you know what? They're coming back with a vengeance this time. It's a whole different team. And they've had 4 years on the sidelines to think through all this and to know what they wanted to do, which again, you know, that's one of my frustrations with Pam, because she should be moving faster. But anyway, at least we now know there was a criminal investigation that has hit Comey and Brennan.